depression, which is basically numbness. So depression is a biological condition that feels a lot like nothingness. It feels like nothing. It's numbness as opposed to just sadness. Sadness, again, can be a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Hey guys, welcome back to Deep Space. My name is Ben. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor, and today we're going to be talking about depression. Maybe more accurately what depression isn't. There's a little bit of some misconceptions out there, some confusion. So we're going to talk about what depression is and isn't, what depression does, how you can recognize it in your own life and in your loved ones. And we're going to talk about what depression needs, kind of some of the basics to how to help with depression. And then we're going to talk about how you can help others if there's somebody in your life that is struggling with it, how you can be there for them and how you can be most helpful. So basically depression is more of a sickness than it is an emotion. Like it's something that we experience. It's got a really strong biological component. You know, it happens in our brains, it happens in our it happens in our gut, it happens throughout our body in a pretty physical way. That shows up a lot in feelings, it shows up a lot in emotions. So it's not just purely an emotion. In fact, we're going to look really quick at a body map of emotions to be able to see more of how our body experiences it. So one of the misconceptions about depression is that depression and sadness are synonymous, right? So somebody who's depressed, we think of them as like sadness on steroids, like they're just super, super extra sad, which is actually not the case. And for those of you that are experiencing depression, you can probably relate to that. There's a lot of overlap in sadness and depression. The experiences are somewhat similar, and they do sort of intertwine and they interweave, and so people who are experiencing depression will often feel really sad, but it's not the same thing. So if we look at this body map real quick, okay, check this out. So this body map shows where we feel emotions. The yellow and the red, yellow being the strongest, just show like heat maps of activation, right? So what we see as yellow and red, that's where we feel more of that emotion, and that emotion shows up as an activation thing. And where you see blue, especially the bright blue that's almost white, that's like negative, that's like numbness, that's like an absence of emotion. So check out, like, this is not, yellow doesn't mean good. So you can see like love and anger are actually somewhat similar. Love and anxiety, they kind of look a little bit similar. It just means there's activity there, good, bad, action. So check out what sadness looks like, right? So the sadness map shows some activity in the chest, a little bit in the face, and then a lot of numbness, a lot of blue in the legs and the extremities, the legs and the hands and the arms. It's like I'm feeling less when I'm sad, but I feel that activity in my chest. Now compare that to the depression map. It looks a lot like sadness, but there's not that activity in the chest. That feeling isn't showing up in the chest and in behind the eyes and in the throat. Instead, it's like the numbness of sadness stronger without the activity. So that's more of how you can understand depression, and you can see how they could overlap, right? Like sadness looks a lot like depression. When that light goes out of that feeling is when you're left with depression. So sometimes people that are chronically sad will slip into depression as that light. It's like they have the depressed feelings everywhere except in their chest, their face, their throat. And then when that light of emotion goes out, then they're left with depression, which is basically numbness. So depression is a biological condition that feels a lot like nothingness. It feels like nothing. It's numbness as opposed to just sadness. Sadness, again, can be a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. That feeling of nothingness and that feeling of numbness begins to spread into your actions. It begins to spread into your activities. It changes the way that you feel about doing stuff, about doing the kinds of things that typically make you feel better, that energize you, that bring you momentum into life. Depression says, I don't feel like doing those things because I'm depressed, I have this numbness, so when I go and I do those things, it doesn't feel all that good. It's something that we call anhedonia, where the things that usually bring me joy and usually bring me happiness, I don't really feel joy from them. All I feel is this continual numbness, and then I can have emotion about that. I can feel like I don't like to go and hang out with my friends and feel nothing, so I'm not going to go at all. I don't feel the motivation or the momentum to get out the door and go do it, so I'm not going to do it at all. So what happens is the things that usually make me feel better, I don't feel like doing. And as those things get cut out of my life, now I'm feeling worse and worse because now I don't have the things that would make me feel better in the first place. So it's progressive. It begins to spread, and it'll start taking away first the things that are more on the fringe that you maybe wouldn't do in your normal schedule, but it will begin to take out things that are even in your routine. I'm not going to go to the gym anymore because I don't feel like it. I'm not going to hang out with my friends anymore because I don't feel like it. I'm not going to go eventually it'll get to the place where the end results of that is I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like doing anything. I feel completely and utterly numb. And eventually that can lead to I don't feel like living. Depression can lead to suicidal thoughts. It's a pretty common connection that you have to be really careful with because that progression can expand pretty dangerously. Depression is a biological condition. It's an embodiment of a lack of feeling, a lack of emotion, like the light is going out. That looks a lot like sadness, and has a lot of sadness undertones and overlap, but is not purely sadness in and of itself. That progresses, and that can progress into places that are dangerous for us. What does depression need? If we thought of it like an organism, right? Like if depression was alive, it would be a lot like maybe mold, where it grows really, really well in the dark. It grows really well in isolation. It doesn't want light shined on it. It wants to just sort of like be that thing that's happening behind the scenes that nobody sees, and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it grows. So one of the solutions, one of the things that you've got to be able to do with depression is let light into it, let it be seen. And sometimes for a lot of people, that's even by yourself. You have to be able to acknowledge that this is the reality of your situation. Like, you're depressed. It's not doing you any good to pretend like you're not, to run from it, to hide from it, to hide it from other people. All that you end up doing then is you keep it in the dark where it grows really, really well, like mold. So shining light on it looks a lot like talking about it. It looks a lot like sharing it with other people. It looks like being honest and being open with yourselves, with other people about the situation that you're in, that hey, you're feeling depressed and it's not good, and that it's starting to take things from you, and you can see it progressing, and you got to get ahead of it, and you know that. So awareness is a really big thing for shining light into that kind of moldy, grows in the dark place. Depression is one of the rare times where your body and your emotions are kind of betraying you, and you can't just do what you feel like doing. A lot of times our bodies are really good indicators. Our bodies are often pretty trustworthy. Like, hey, you need more of you're thirsty. You need more water. Your body will give you signals. Depression is one of those, though, that gives you signals that say, that's why it's progressive, is it gives you signals that say, don't do these things that are going to help you. Instead, do these things that are not going to help you. Isolate yourself, go lay in bed all day, don't get up, don't move. Those are the things that depression is telling you. So what you sometimes have to do is, through your awareness and through talking with people and your honesty about your situation, is saying, I know I don't feel like going to the gym today, but I also know that it's going to help me and it's going to make me feel better. I'm on it. And so sometimes it's counterintuitive action, moving against the grain of what the depression is craving and is begging for, and moving into activities that here will actually be helpful for you, like spending time with people, getting out, going and doing stuff, doing the things that bring you joy and that bring you life and bring you energy, even though the depression says that's the last thing I feel like doing. The other thing that often helps with depression is when that progression is happening, it's taking root, and it's just really making it tough to feel like doing anything at all, is to talk to your doctor about potentially getting on some medication. That's where psych meds are, in my opinion, the most effective, is when they break cycles that are happening within us that become gridlocked. Talk to your doctor about it, and break some of those cycles so that you have enough energy to get out of bed, which gets you moving, and then enough energy to go and hang out with the people that love you and that will be there for you in a way that you wouldn't when you're just totally depressed and you're not feeling like it, right? So to break some of those cycles, meds can be really helpful. Meds can be really helpful too in a therapy setting, where they can just sort of give you enough of a boost to be open, enough of a boost to be honest, enough of a boost to feel like the work that you're doing in therapy goes someplace and it begins to move forward. Sometimes meds are like the unsticking tool when depression is becoming so progressive that it's getting you stuck. What can you do if you've got somebody in your life who's depressed? If you're worried about a loved one, how can you be helpful? So here's some do's and some don'ts. First of all, number one thing that you don't want to do with somebody who's depressed is shame them. Shame is an emotion. I don't know if I've done a video on shame. I should. I probably will at some point. Shame is an emotion that is very, very similar to depression in that it also loves to grow in the dark and isolation. So shame and depression can often come together where I feel really, really bad. I'm really depressed. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm starting to get messages that I'm too much, or that they keep trying to talk me out of it, and their logic and their reason doesn't seem to be helping, and that they're getting tired of that. They're getting fed up with they think I'm stubborn or something, and I can feel like I'm failing. I can feel like I'm doing it wrong, or that I just can't beat this thing. Shame can really sneak in there and say, yeah, it's because you messed up. Something's wrong with you. You're not right. And that will just take depression and shoot it through the roof. You really don't want that. Depression is not the same as sadness, so we don't want to address the depressed person as if they're just sad and try to talk to them about ways to not be sad. Trying to comfort sadness when we've got a depressed person can end up feeling like, this person's really super thirsty and you're giving them a cheeseburger. Cheeseburgers are good. Hunger is a need, but when I'm thirsty, that's not necessarily the need that I have. So matching up and making sure that we are there for the sadness, because it does come often at the same time, but that we don't try to approach this as just purely sadness, right? So staying present with a depressed person is really helpful too. They're gonna need you. It's tempting. Depression can feel almost contagious. It can really weigh on you, and it can be tempting to say, I just can't be around that person. But just know your presence means a lot. If you can just be there, sometimes your presence alone is enough to really make a difference. And especially when you can use your presence for empathy. When you can allow yourself to validate this experience for them and say, yeah, I get it. I know that this doesn't always make sense to you, and that you've got feelings that are numb, and that you're not feeling what you normally would think that you would feel, and that sucks, and I'm with you in it, and I get it, and I can only imagine what you're going through, but I've got your back, and I'm here. And just being present in that, and using your empathy to stay present, not just physically but emotionally as a support. Another good thing to focus on in trying to help with your friends, your loved ones who are depressed, is helping to encourage them to continue to move forward, to not stall, to not lose their momentum, to not allow that progressive thing we talked about. So depression needs sometimes that counterintuitive nudge towards what is going to be actually helpful and away from the stuff that it's asking for sometimes. To be supportive in that, but you got to be really balanced in that. If you want to recognize the need for that while balancing it with empathy and understanding about how hard that is for people to do sometimes. So it's not like you don't want to come in pom-poms, rah, let's go for a run. You need it, let's do it. When the person is super depressed, they might be like, okay, where did you hear that you should do this? Never watch another one of that dude's videos again. Because that can make them feel like you're just not seeing them. So you want to be able to balance between, I'm here for you, I get that this is really hard, I get that this is something you don't feel like doing. At the same time, I'm going to use whatever influence I have to just encourage you to continue to move forward, to continue to do the things that you know are going to bring you joy. And then two, being helpful to encourage people to go talk to their doctor or to talk to a therapist and say, this seems like something that normalize it, that this happens to a lot of people. There's something, I think I read today, something like 14 million cases of depression regularly in the United States. It's a really common thing. So normalizing, saying, yeah, this happens to a lot of people, and there's no shame in it. Again, no shame in asking for help, letting people into it. Let them see that that you're not going to judge them for needing to talk to a therapist or talking to a doctor or taking medication, that those things are all legit and you're there for them in it. So depression is a real deal thing. We've got to take it really seriously. If you're struggling with depression, just know that I'm with you. My heart is with you. If there's anything that I can do to help with from here with this channel, for my clients, just know I got your back in this. We're going to do this together. For the people in my life that have come to approached me lately about depression and depression for their loved ones, I love you guys. I'm with you. Anything that I can do to help, we're going to do this together. We care about you and we're in this with you. So I'm with you guys in that. If that's something that you're into, feel free to share this video with anybody that you know that it would be helpful, and hit subscribe. We've got more videos coming. We'll have more content. We're probably about once, twice a week. Love you guys so much. Thanks for joining me. Again, my name's Ben. Thanks for joining me here at Deep Space. We will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.